Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to this crash course on ChatGPT for software engineers. So, for those of you that don't know, ChatGPT is basically a chatbot. I mean, it's a little bit more than that, but a very simple way of looking at it is that it's simply a chatbot, and you can interact with it in a conversational way. And this tool is actually very useful for software engineers, so I decided to make a tutorial on how you can benefit from using this, since I've been using it pretty extensively for the past couple of weeks. So this video is basically going to be broken down into two sections. So I'm first going to show you how to use this tool specifically to learn new concepts, and following that I'm going to show you how you can make use of this tool to assist you with your work or personal projects by essentially circumventing a lot of the Googling and documentation reading that you would have to do when starting a new project, for example. So if you haven't already started using this tool, you're going to go ahead and click this button here that says try ChatGPT. And they're basically going to ask you to log in or create an account here. You can just use your Google account. So basically you can just continue with Google here and do it that way. Now, once you're logged in, you're going to be met with this pop-up here, and it just gives you an overview of the goals of the project. And it also lets us know that the system may occasionally generate incorrect or misleading information, which you're going to run in if you use this extensively enough. But there are ways to get around this, so don't worry about that too much. And also let you know that not to share sensitive information. Just assume that people are going to be reading your conversations on this. And lastly, you can provide feedback if you want to do that. So before we get into it, let's go over a couple of the things that we have here. So most importantly, we want to go over the capabilities of ChatGPT. So basically, when you're interacting with this chatbot, within the scope of that chat, the bot's going to remember things that you said or things that you guys discussed. And you're basically going to be able to conversate with it as if you were conversating with a human being. Like, if it gives you an explanation, you can contest their explanation and stuff like that. It's pretty interesting. So if any of you out there are looking for somebody to talk to, ChatGPT is here for you. Anyways, you can go over this stuff, but basically it's just common sense. Oh, and this one's actually not common sense. It has limited knowledge of the world and events after 2021. So that might impact the answers that you get or the things that you're able to get information about. Anyways, once you've gone over all of these points, this is the input. So this is where you're actually going to provide the input to communicate with the chatbot. So for example, I can say something like, "Where does your knowledge come from?" And as you can see, they are answering. And when you start a conversation, it's going to create a new chat for you over here. And if you want, you can start another conversation by hitting new chat, and you can have a separate conversation going. So maybe you want to ask, what is the most popular programming language? But anyways, let's get into the first section. So learning and understanding new concepts. So this is the way that I like to do it. So basically I have a notepad open, and whatever topic that I'm trying to learn, I'll put a title for it. And I'm using Notion for this, by the way, but you can use any note-taking app. So let's say, for example, we're interested in learning about object-oriented design patterns. So we'll just put that here, and maybe for starters, I would want to do creational design patterns. And within this one, maybe I want to start with the factory method pattern. So we can head back into ChatGPT, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new chat because I just want to separate what I'm trying to learn into their own chats. And you can just start with a simple question. Explain the factory method pattern. And actually, sometimes the chatbot won't finish its explanation. So in those cases, when the chatbot doesn't finish its explanation, you can just type in continue and it'll continue its explanation. Now we can go back up to the top of the explanation here, and you can see that it's providing a general explanation of the factory method pattern, and it's also providing a code example. Now this code example is in Python, but if you would rather have this example be in different language, you can just tell this thing And as you can see here, it will rewrite the example in Java. And you can see here that it remembers that it already gave you an example in Python. And this could be useful because in this case, I think the Java example is more clear, because in Java, you have to be more explicit about whether or not you're creating an abstract class. So if you look at this Python example, we're just creating this creator class. It's not clear that it's abstract or not. It's not clear that this method is abstract, or maybe you're just more comfortable with Java in general. So this type of thing could be useful. Anyways, when you go through the definition that is provided to you for this pattern, you will notice that there might be some inconsistencies, or there might be some errors in whatever it is that the chatbot is telling you. There may or may not be. Like, I'm not saying that there are. I haven't read through all this. But in the case that you notice something that doesn't sound quite right, you can actually question it. So like, I'm asking about the factory method pattern, right? But what if you suspect that the pattern the chatbot is explaining is the abstract factory pattern? You could say something like, isn't this the abstract factory pattern? And actually, in this case, I think we've gone and confused it, because it's saying that I'm correct, which I'm pretty sure I'm not. I think that was the factory method pattern that it gave me an example for. Yeah, so we have class and we have the subclasses that implement the factory method. Yeah, so it looks like the factory method pattern to me. I'm not sure why it said I'm correct when I called it the abstract factory pattern. But yeah, that's just one of the quirks. Like, you'll notice that it's not always 100% correct. Actually, sometimes it's not even like 70 or 80% correct, but the benefits of using this outweigh the cons. For example, if you're trying to study something and you're having a hard time understanding it, like maybe we're having a hard time understanding the factory method pattern. So you can do something like explain the factory method pattern to a 5-year-old. And you can see that you get a more simplified explanation. So we can go back up to the original explanation, and we can just go ahead and take the initial definition. So we'll take that and we'll go ahead and add that to our notes. And we can also take the code example. Now, another thing that's pretty cool about this is we've already gone through 2 examples of this pattern. And the first one was the Python example. And the chatbot remembers everything that we've talked about. So I can say something like, in the Python example that you gave, there was no abstract class. And let's see what it says. Now, as you can see here, since I mentioned that it didn't use an abstract class, it remembers that it didn't use the abstract class in this Python example. So then it's going to correct its example. And now it's going to import ABC, and it's going to make this class an abstract class. And it's also going to use this decorator to make this method an abstract method. So now the concrete classes that extend this class are going to be required to implement this method. So as you can see, sometimes there are some oversights. I mean, it's not necessarily an error. So you can kind of tailor the examples that it provides to you to be to your standard. Like, I would rather it be more specific about which classes are abstract and which ones are the concrete classes that are implementing the methods. And it'll again give you a little bit more of an explanation. It might be something similar to what it already explained. But yeah, you can do all types of other things with this. Like, the sky is the limit. So say, for example, you don't understand what an abstract class is. You can do something like, in this context, what is an abstract class? And it will literally go on to explain to you in object-oriented programming what an abstract class is. And again, it's going to give examples. And I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Like, I'm sure you can get pretty creative with the way that you interact with this chatbot so that you can learn things. Like, I've been using this extensively to learn things, and it's been saving me a lot of time because it requires me to need to sift through Google less, because it kind of centralizes all of the information for you. So you're instead of needing to compile a bunch of information that you get from Google and kind of organize it yourself, it's kind of organized for you already through the chat. And it's all kind of in order. So if I wanted to, I could just copy all of this and then just paste it into my note. But you might throw some duplicate information in your note if you do that. You might want to just kind of narrow down the information that you're given in your actual note. But yeah, you can ask some pretty difficult questions and it will be able to give you some relatively good answers in most cases. But yeah, so that's about it for how to use it as a learning resource. So let's go ahead and get into how this can help you with your personal projects and your work. So let's say, for example, you wanted to create like a blog site, a personal blog site or something, and you have some experience with Django and Python, so you just want to create one using those technologies. So we could just say, create a template blog site using Python and Django. And as you see here, it's going to list step by step everything that you need to do to get started with this project. And once it's finished listing out the steps for you, as you can see, there's some errors here, like all of the steps are step 1. But it's fine because I think everything else is correct. So it's telling you that you need to install Python and Django on your machine, and it tells you how to install Python, and then it tells you how to install Django. And then it tells you how to create a new Django project. And after that, it tells you how to create a new Django app within the project. And it tells you how to define your models, create database migration, create your views, tells you everything. But you can even go further with it. Like maybe you're curious about this create Django app. So maybe we'll say something like, and as you can see, it'll explain, yes, in Django, an app is a self-contained unit of code, and it explains to you with code snippets why you need to create the app. Now, if you really put this into perspective, like these are things that would have taken you a lot more time to Google. Like you'd have to go and find the Django getting started documentation. You'd need to read through the documentation. This kind of just gives you the quick points, like the bullet points. Like you don't need to read any additional fluff. And then usually you would need to go on Stack Overflow or something and ask these questions. But like for the most part, you can get the answers to most questions by just asking here. And maybe we're super lazy and we want it to create part of this for us. So maybe we'll say, let's see. And it basically never says no. Like I've asked it to do many things and the answer is always certainly. So that's good. But yeah, it'll give you a sample of what the models.py file might look like, and then it'll explain to you everything in it. And you can use this for any framework, like for the most part, any recent framework you can use this for. And you can go deeper and deeper into any explanation that it gives you. But yeah, that's basically a crash course on how to use ChatGPT as a software engineer. So you're really only limited by your imagination. Like I know I didn't go over many scenarios here, but like you can kind of imagine the possibilities by seeing the scenarios that I did go over. So I encourage you to start messing around with this like yesterday because it's actually a really cool tool. And it can drastically increase the speed at which you learn new things as well, because it's going to save you a lot of time if you become efficient with it. But anyways, that's going to be it for this video. If you liked it or if it was helpful, go ahead and leave a like. And if you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing as well. And I'll see you in the next one.